كلية الفقه الحنفي تقدم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده. So today we will be going through we'll start off actually mentioning in regards to the types of divorce. I want to clarify regarding the different types of divorce, because there's a lot of different types, right? There was the ahsan, the hasan, the bid'ah. Then there was the sarih and the kinaya with it. Then there is this, raj'i. Then there is this ba'in. Then there is this mughallatha. So what is all of these different types of divorces? So we'll clarify this, inshallah. I will explain this in detail, that what are these categories, the different sets of divorces in terms of categorization, and inshallah hopefully that will become clear for everybody today. So we'll talk about that. We'll start off with that, inshallah, and then we will discuss regarding what the discussion we started last time with regarding the kinaya, the elusive terms of divorce, and the different states that that a person could be in when issuing these types of divorce. So as a result of which, do we need intention? Do we not need intention? What's happening over here? Because there are certain states or certain times or certain wordings that are used in certain states that do not require an intention, though we did say that the elusive terms, as an overarching rule, do need an intention. They do need an intention, but in certain states the intention would not be required. So we'll talk about that in detail. I'll explain this, and inshallah you can draw out a chart for it, a table format chart, so it makes it easier for everybody to understand what we talk about there. Then we will go on to mentioning when a divorce becomes a irrevocable divorce. We will also mention the ruling of attributing divorce to the wife, or to a part of the wife, to a limb, a body part of the wife, or issuing a fraction of the wife a divorce. So what happens there? And different body parts we'll talk about when a person issues divorce. Likewise, we'll also talk about divorcing a part of a divorce. So this is the first one, was like talking about the fraction of a wife, like a half of you is divorced. Likewise, if a person fractions the divorce itself, the half a divorce I'm giving to you. So what happens there? We'll talk about that. And then I think lastly we'll talk about the divorce of a coerced person, a person who is angry, and a person who is drunkard. So will their divorces occur? So inshallah we'll shed some light on these aspects today. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So now to move on today, so just to make sure that people understand this new concept as well, that many times people understand that there are three types of divorce, and they will say that it is raj'i, and then there is ba'in, and there is ghalidha. Now remember, these types of divorce that we're talking about in terms of the resulting divorce, what does it result in? What does the divorce result in? So if you're talking about from that angle, then categorizing it in three is not actually correct. It's only two. There's only two types of divorce. So it's either going to be revocable or irrevocable. So either you've got a revocable divorce, where the husband can revoke the wife within the period, or you've got a irrevocable divorce whereby they would have to conduct a nikah again. That's only if it's one or two. So there's these two types. Okay, so you got two types, and now the irrevocable which I talked about at the end of last time, irrevocable splits up into two. One is the khafifa and the other is the ghalidha. So the ghalidha is the mughalladha that people know as, which is the 3 divorces that have occurred. So just like a raj'i divorce can also become a mughalladha eventually if a person gives 1, then 2, and then a 3rd divorce. So one can be irrevocable, 2nd can also be revocable, but as soon as he issues the 3rd divorce, even if it was clear divorce, it will automatically become a ghalidha, meaning you cannot take her back anymore. So though we called it a sarih divorce, and a sarih divorce, a clear wording of divorce. Every time he said divorce, I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you. All the times he issued 3 divorces were clear wordings. So the first 2 times will be a revocable. The 3rd time he will no longer be able to revoke because he has no longer any more talaqs left. So that's a concept to understand. Likewise, if he was issuing a implicit wording of divorce, elusive term, and he said get out of here, and he meant talaq, and he said get out of here, or some other wording, and he meant talaq. If he says get out of here a 3rd time, it will now become mughalladha, right? So first time it was a ba'in, where it was irrevocable, they had to marry again. So they got married again, and then he said it again to her. And there again, it will become irrevocable. Now the 3rd time he says it becomes a ghalidha. So hopefully people understand this concept that each one of the talaq can eventually become a ghalidha as long as it's 3. And you can mix it about if you want. The first time he gives a raji, the second time he gives a ba'in, whatever it is. So the point is that the concept, hopefully if people have understood that, we talk about all these different types of divorces. It's in relation to what we're talking about in. Hopefully it's quite clear to understand now the different types, because it's very confusing sometimes for people. What's this type? We talked about 3 types of divorce at the beginning, where we talked about ahsan, hasan, and bid'ah. We talked about that, but that was in relation to how many divorces a person gives and when a person gives the divorce, remembering that. Then we talked about 2 types of divorce in relation to the wording a person uses. So does a person use clear wording, or is a person using implicit, elusive wording? So then there was the 2 types of divorce here, sarih and a kinaya. And then the resulting factor, what type of talaq does it result in? Is it a revocable or irrevocable divorce? So that was the different types there. And obviously, if he's issued all 3, finished, that will then equal a mughalladh, ghalidha divorce, a heavy type of divorce. So now, hopefully all of this, if people draw it out nicely, will become very easy to understand for those people who can visualize that or think of that themselves in their mind. Then that's all good. You don't have to draw it out. Inshallah, it will become easy for people. So now, we mentioned that if a person gives a kinaya type of divorce, a implicit wording of divorce, right? So then he goes on in the book to mention that this type of wording, it will need an intention, right? We talked about this from before, that a implicit wording, a elusive wording will need an intention. But there's a added caveat to this now, yes? That when is it that a person does need intention, but sometimes we don't need an intention. We don't need to have an intention. So I'm going to skip some of the parts in the matan to make it quite easy. I'm going to bring it all together, inshallah, on the discussion in the book. The way it's mentioned, it's a little bit jumping here and there and it's a bit complicated. So we'll make it very easy. I'm going to use the text of the Lubab, if you want to follow along, where he describes the different types. And it's very nicely summarized. If you want to use that part, I would say to use that to follow along. So he describes that there are 3 states of a person. So a person is either in a state of happiness or normal state of a person, like a person is right now. Maybe there's a normal state of yourself, a normal state of a human being generally to be happy, right? So a normal state, and then you have a state in which a person is discussing divorce. So you're discussing divorce with the wife. There's a discussion going on. Or lastly, a state of anger. So either you are in one of these 3 states. Then, in terms of the types of elusive terms of divorce, there are also three different categories that he mentions. One is the category, number one, the category of those wordings which have the possibility of a response to the wife. So where he is responding to her, and meaning that she has requested a divorce, for example, and he is responding to her saying, okay, I divorce you, kind of thing, right? That kind of concept. But remember, divorce you is obviously an explicit term. He's have to say, for example, he says that she's requesting divorce. He says that the matter's in your hands. It's up to you now. So if he says something like that, that's explicit. It's elusive, should I say? It's elusive, but it's explicit in terms that he's responding to her. He is giving her a response. And it doesn't have the possibility of being a rejection to what she's requesting. So just to make this clear, so for example, if she was requesting a divorce, she's saying, give me divorce, and he says, get out of here. So now that has the possibility of being a response, get out of here, then go on, I've given you a divorce. Or it could be, get out of here, I'm not giving you a divorce. So remember, this can be this could be a response to her, as we call it, a response, that okay, then I give you what you're asking for. But it could also be a rejection, that I'm not giving you what you're asking for. So you see, certain words can have a possibility of both. And the first type of wording we're talking about here has only the possibility of being a response to her, but not a possibility of rejecting what she's asking. So for example, like I said, he says, the matter's in your hands, you decide. Right? She asked for divorce. So that kind of wording only has a possibility of giving a response to her. Then I'm accepting what you're saying. The matter's in your hands. He's not rejecting her. Likewise, it's not a curse. It's not a insult, should we say, to her. So that's what this first type of wording is. Now you can understand, if you understand that the second type would be obviously those wordings which have the possibility of both. It has the possibility of being a response, as well as a possibility of a, should we do this one first? So he says the possibility of a response or an insult. It can be an insult as well, right? That, for example, he says, you're haram. So the meaning that you're such a haram person, you're such a, always asking for divorce, you're a haram person, like he's insulting her, right? Or it could be that you're haram on me now, I'm giving you a divorce. So it has these two possibilities, but it doesn't have the possibility of rejecting her request, right? He's not rejecting her. He's either insulting her or he's either giving a response to her. And lastly, the wording has a possibility of either being a response or rejection, right? And it doesn't have the possibility of being a insult to her or a curse to her. So for example, like I said, get out of here. He said, get out of here. This would be either a response to her request, like, okay, go on then, I've given you a divorce. Or it could be a rejection, no, I'm not giving you a divorce, get out of here. So these are three types of wordings that they categorize, and three states of a person. Okay, and inshallah in the next video we'll talk about this. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So now if you were to draw this out in a table format, it will make it very easy to understand. So you have either the three types of wordings across the top, and the three states of a person, in rows, so you just draw columns and rows, and you draw like a table. Okay, you can have it the other way around, no problem. You can have the three types of wordings on the side and the three states of a person on the top. Is not no problem. Now, what happens in the state of when a person is normal, is in a normal state? There's no discussion of any divorce, and the person is normally just happy, really. So in that state of happiness, what happens? In nothing will be divorce, meaning any of the three words he used, whether it's wording which has the possibility of response only, whether it's wording that has a possibility of response or insult, or it's wording which has the possibility of response and a rejection. It doesn't matter which type of wording he uses. We will need his intention in all three wordings. That's in the state of when he's rida, when he's happy. We will ask him that, what did you intend by that? So if he says randomly to his wife, the matter's in your hands, so we'll have to ask him, what do you mean by that? And then he'll clarify that I meant divorce, or I meant the matter's in your hands regarding what furniture we go buy, or which shop we go to, whatever. So it will depend on his intention. And likewise, if it was a wording which has only the possibility of, which has the possibility, you are haram, or anything like this. So the point is that any wording he uses will need his intention. So hopefully that one's quite easy to understand. Then, if the state where there's discussion of divorce going on. So there's a discussion of divorce that is happening between the husband and wife. They're talking about divorce. Maybe she's even requesting a divorce, or he's threatening that I will give you divorce, anything like that. So there's a discussion of divorce going on. In this state, then the first two types we talked about of wording, which is wording which only have the possibility of response, they don't have the possibility of rejection nor curse. Likewise, wordings which have the possibility of response and insult and curse. In both of them, we don't need his intention. His intention doesn't count. Okay? It will automatically be a divorce, because the context tells us, because they're discussing divorce, that he meant divorce by it. So if he says to her, the matter is in your hands, when they're discussing divorce, or he says to her, you are haram, then this will equal a divorce. But if he said wording, even in this state, if he said this wording, discussion of divorce going on, and he says a wording which has possibility of both a response to her as well as a rejection, then the divorce won't occur unless he has intention. He has to tell us that he intended it. So that's two places where you will write on the table, no need intention, no need of intention. And the last state we have is the state of anger. So we had three states, if you remember: state of happiness or normal state of a person. Second is the discussion of divorce, where two places there is no need for intention clarification. And the third one is where he is angry. So in a state of anger, then there's one place where his intention will not be considered. That is where it's the possibility of a response only. So if it's only a possibility of being a response, this wording does not have the possibility of being an insult, nor a possibility of being a rejection, then it will be a divorce. So he was angry and he said, the matter's in your hands, for example. Then this will equal a divorce without his intention. But if he said a wording which is the second and the third category of wording, meaning that he said, for example, he said a wording which has the possibility of response as well as an insult. So his anger may indicate that he meant to insult her. So he's so angry, he said, you are haram. That could mean that his anger is indicating towards maybe wanting to insult her. So that's why we can't immediately say it's a divorce. But likewise, the obvious one, when it's a possibility of response or rejection, like get out of here, that's obviously can't be a divorce without his intention. So this is now understood. If you were to draw all of these 9 scenarios out, 3 of them you should have. Out of them, 3 of them would be no intention needed. Okay, so hopefully this is understood. Having said this, all of this only applies when it comes to a judge, when it comes in front of a judge. So only the judge can decide that this is not a divorce or this is a divorce. So if it, obviously then it has to be a Muslim country where you have a Muslim judge, and that Muslim judge will decide over here that okay, over here we had the state of discussion of divorce and he used this wording, so we're going to issue a divorce without his intention. So only the judge has this discretion to be able to judge, to be able to rule this. A mufti will not rule in accordance to this, okay, because this guidance is only for the judge, looking at context, looking at anger, all of that. When it comes to the mufti, or even an alim, whoever it is that's issuing a fatwa, if you are issuing a ruling to a particular case that occurs. So if somebody came to me and said that, there was a discussion of divorce and he said this, he said that, let's say, for example, he said the matter's in your hands, and then he comes around and turns to me that says that I didn't mean that. He's going to have a good explanation to explain what he meant. But I cannot ignore his intention, in essence. I will have to still issue a ruling according to his intention. So when it comes to what we call diyanatan, which the mufti gives a fatwa according to, the ruling will have to be still based on intention. Only qada'an, when it comes to the qadi, will it be based on what we said there, in terms of we will take context into consideration too. So hopefully that mas'ala has also been clarified. So his intention is still somewhat, you can say his intention is still considered and looked at. So this is in relation to these kinayat, we call them elusive terms, and when we categorize them, because a lot of them, we just categorize them into these three categories. Which one does it fit into? Right? Obviously, sometimes some of them will have a little slight overlap. Somebody might say it belongs to this, belongs to that category. That's no problem. The point is understood, hopefully, concept-wise, that there are three categories of wording and there are three states of the person, and only out of the 9 scenarios we make, 3 of them will be where there is no need for intention, just to make sure that people have understood which places where there is no intention needed, when it comes to the qadi in a Muslim country. So he will judge where there is the discussion of divorce going on and the person uses wordings which only have the possibility of being a response to her request, or only have the possibility of being a response and an insult, meaning they don't have the possibility of being a rejection. So in these two scenarios, and lastly in a state of anger, if he uses wording which only has the possibility of being a response to her, it doesn't have the possibility of rejection nor an insult. So only those wordings will consider to be a divorce straight away. And obviously it will issue a irrevocable divorce, basically because he has used implicit wording, elusive terms, unless he uses those 3 terms that we used, which equal a revocable divorce. Now moving on, then he describes that if a person increases the quality of the divorce, the description, should you say, of divorce, so there's some sort of increased meaning he is giving to that divorce. So for example, he says that I give you a vile divorce, I give you a really severe divorce, I give you an intense divorce, I give you a really huge divorce. So the point is that he's increasing the quality or the sifa, the description of that talaq, right? If he does any of that, he says here, if he says that I give you a talaq of shaitan, I give you a talaq of bid'ah, I give you a talaq like a mountain, right? I give you a talaq room full of divorces, I give you any of this kind of thing, right? So all of this will issue a talaq ba'in, a irrevocable divorce. So normally he said the word talaq, which will issue a revocable, but because he has increased the severity of that divorce, increased severity of the divorce would obviously mean something which is more than a revocable, which obviously means that it now shifts into the revocable divorce. So this will now become a revocable divorce. The concept is very easy. If you increase the severity of the divorce, it becomes a revocable, even though he used explicit wording. So that concept is hopefully understood there. Then, if a person attributes talaq to the entire wife of his, like he says, you are divorced, you are fully divorced, anything like that, then obviously she would be divorced. But likewise, if he attributes the talaq to a limb, to a body part, which that body part can be interpreted to mean the entire body. So for example, if he says your head is divorced, now the head of a person can be interpreted as the full body, meaning you say the head and you mean the full person, right? You say that oh, so-and-so person is the head of the people, he's the head of the year, he's the head of, whatever department. The idea is that the head is mentioned and that full person, you mean the full person. So if you attribute the divorce to a body part which can be interpreted as the entire person, then the divorce will occur. A full divorce will occur, the idea is. So he gives examples like your neck is divorced, your nape is divorced, your ruh, your spirit is divorced, your body is divorced, your privates are divorced, your face is divorced. Any of these kind of wordings will obviously be interpreted as the full person. Or if a person portions her, says a third of you is divorced, a half of you is divorced, or anything like that, right? So it could be a tenth of you is divorced, because you can't issue a divorce to a tenth or a third of the person, right? It's like you give divorce to a third of hers, but then it's like an infection. It then saturates, it goes into the rest of the body, and the whole body will be divorced. The whole person will be divorced. So you can't give a divorce on half or a third or less than any portion, less than that even, or more than that even. The idea is that you portion the divorce like that, and a full divorce would have occurred. So this is three main concepts here. You got a divorce that's attributed to the entire person. Then you got a divorce that attributed to a limb that is interpreted as the entire person, or you are divorcing a fraction of that person, but the entire divorce will occur. Now, the contrary to that is if a person gives a divorce and attributes that divorce to a limb, a body part, which cannot be interpreted as the full body. Like he says that your saliva is divorced, right? Your teeth or your nails are divorced. Then no divorce will occur, because that's just futile, right? You can't divorce somebody's saliva and then interpret that as the full person. You can't do that. So nothing occurs there. Okay? So that's a concept that hopefully people have understood. Moving forward, that if he gives a half a divorce or a fraction of a divorce, so this time he's not attributing divorce to a part of her, but he's just giving so he says, I give you half a divorce, or I give you 1/10 or 1/5 of a divorce. So he basically is trying to make his divorces last longer by, fractioning it, by saying that I give you half a divorce today. Then maybe next time he says, I give you the other half of it now. You can't do that. The idea is, as soon as he states any portion of a divorce, that divorce would have occurred. The full divorce would have occurred. So you can't portion a divorce. That's a concept that needs to be understood. Now, moving on, which is the more important mas'ala, I would say, that if a person is coerced, a person is forced to give a divorce, the divorce will occur. Okay? So this seems to be a really harsh mas'ala that we Hanafis we give, that how come a person who is compelled, he's forced, he's held to gunpoint, there's a knife on their throat, like it happened in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that the wife, she tied him up and she climbed on top of him, held the knife to his throat while he was sleeping, and woke him up and says that you better give me a divorce, otherwise I'll chop your throat off. He tried to plead to her, she wasn't having it, so he had to end up giving a divorce. And eventually, when he came to Prophet ﷺ, then Prophet ﷺ issued that divorce. And obviously some people have called this narration a weak narration, but the concept of it is still established in many other narrations where if a person is coerced, is forced to do something, Prophet ﷺ still upheld that. Like in the famous incident, I believe it was Hudhayfa radiallahu anhu, where correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that when the occasion of where he was migrating, and he mentions this incident, saying that some, of the mushrikun, some of the polytheists of Mecca, they caught up to him and they said to him that you are going Medina, right? We're not letting you go. So he said, no, I'm just going Medina. I'm not going to join the Prophet. I'm not going to. So then they basically took a promise from him that, okay, we're going to let you go, but you cannot join him. Meaning you cannot join him in battles against us or anything like that. You're not going to join him. So then when he came to Medina, and obviously Badr takes place, then he explains this to Rasulullah. Rasulullah tells him to keep the promise that he had made. Though he was, in essence, in a state of coercion, he was forced to make that promise. Prophet would have said that, you made this promise under coercion, so you shouldn't have. It doesn't count. But this wasn't the case. Prophet said, no, you stay back. You stay. We will go without you, because you made this promise. You fulfilled that promise. So the idea of it is still established here, that though a person is coerced, a person is forced, the divorce will occur. Anyway, the point I'm trying to explain this because of is a lot of people find this difficult to understand. Hopefully, these kind of nusus, you could say, these textual based evidences will make it clear for people anyway. But besides that, there are also logical, rational reasons given as to why a person is, because the idea is that a person who has a choice, their divorce still occurs, meaning they chose something, right? So if a person is being held at gunpoint, they have a choice, though it may be a difficult choice, which is that take the bullet and don't give the divorce. But they're choosing, remember it's a choice they're making, they're still choosing, though like I said, a difficult choice. The choice is that I'm going to save myself from the bullet and I'm going to give the divorce. So they're giving a divorce. That's a choice they've made. They are not happy with that choice. We understand that. But that's just like a person who joked and gave a divorce. They were joking. And later on they found out that your joke is still issuing a divorce. So they're not happy with that as well. They're not happy with the outcome. They're not happy that my divorce occurred. But still, or a person was really angry and gave a divorce still occurred, right? So divorce in a state of anger will also occur. It's only when a person goes into insanity, complete insanity, meaning that a person completely doesn't know what they're doing, right? They don't absolutely know what they're doing to the extent that they don't even know what they're saying. Later on, they had to be told that you gave a divorce. They're like, no, I didn't give a divorce. They're denying it. And that's the level of insanity they reached when they saw bloodshot red, right? They became really angry. Most people don't reach that state of anger. So only in that state the divorce won't occur because they've reached insanity now. But if they were just angry, they knew what they gave. They know, later on they say that, yeah, I know what I said, but I was just so angry, I just couldn't control myself. The divorce still occurs. So the point is that in the state of whether a person is angry, whether a person is coerced, they are still choosing to say something, though it's a difficult choice, but it will still occur. Hopefully this makes sense to people, and that is understood, because it's a very contentious one. A lot of people don't understand this one. And likewise, a person who's drunk, drunkard, their divorce, according to what they mentioned in the matan, will occur. Though, if you see what it mentions in the Lubab as well as in other books, I'm pretty sure in Al-Ikhtiyar it mentions as well that the divorce of the drunkard person, if a person came afterwards, the divorce will not occur. So there is a fatwa that is given by some scholars as well, that the divorce of this person will not occur. So that is something that we don't want to make. The idea of this mas'ala was that it's a deterrent, right? It's a deterrent to stop people from drinking, then, isn't it? That because I may issue a divorce whilst I'm drunk, so I don't want to do that. So if it acts as a deterrent, then so be it. Let people understand that if I give divorce in a state of drunkenness, then the divorce will occur. But if a person had already issued the divorce, they got drunk, they already issued it, then they came to the mufti, then the mufti would be able to, now it's already happened, look, slap on the wrist, if you do it again, it's going to occur. This time we will issue a fatwa that on this particular occasion the divorce didn't occur. That can be a little play, that the meaning that there's a little leeway there, you can say, for the mufti to give a ruling in accordance to. So anyway, there's a lot more detail there. This is like you need to go through an iftar class, you would say, go through a proper mufti class to be able to understand when to issue and when not to issue that particular ruling. But generally speaking, the books will mention that the divorce of a drunkard person would also occur, right? So that's the general rule. And that is the concept over here. Hopefully people have understood. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So alhamdulillah, today we've got through quite a few important areas, important topics. So we firstly talked about clarifying the different types of divorces. So the first types of divorce we talked about, remember, regarding the place where a person gives divorce, meaning in the tahar. So he is giving divorce in what time, and in terms of how many divorces he gives. He only gives one, or he gives multiple. So in those regard, in these two concepts, there are three types of divorces that we talked about: ahsan, the hasan, and the bid'ah. So that's in relation to where the divorce is given and how many divorces are given. So that's that. Then we talked about in terms of the word a person issues. So the wording a person uses, is it a explicit term or is it implicit? So is it sarih or is it kinaya? So these are two types of divorce in terms of wording that a person uses. And lastly, in terms of the effect that the divorce is affecting, the result that the divorce is creating, is it a revocable or irrevocable? And an irrevocable categorizing into irrevocable whereby it's light, we can get back together again, or irrevocable where it's heavy, that's it, it's finished. It's a ghalidha, heavy type of divorce. Now there is no more revoking. Now there's no more nikah after that, unless there is a halala taking place. So this is something we talked about in terms of categorization. Then we talked about the different types of kinayat. We categorized them. We drew out a table. Hopefully everyone remembers that. There are only 3 types in there where a person does not need an intention, or where the qadi, should I say, doesn't need an intention to issue a divorce for. Then we went on to just skimming through certain masail where a person, he adds, a severity to the divorce, it will become a irrevocable divorce. Likewise, if a person attributes the divorce to the wife, or to the body part of a wife, which is interpreted as the full body, or a fraction of the wife, in all cases, divorce fully will occur. And if a person gave a fraction of a divorce, a half or a third or a quarter of a divorce, then again a full divorce will occur. And lastly, we then went through the divorce of a coerced person, a forced person held to gunpoint, for example, or it doesn't have to be gunpoint, it could be a person who is threatened of beats, of being beaten up quite badly or something. Then all of this, any coercion, under coercion, will a person's divorce occur? So we said yes, it will occur, because at the end of the day, a person is still making a choice, so the talaq will occur. Likewise, a person who's drunkard, their divorce will also occur. And a person who is angry, then the person's divorce will also occur in this state of anger. And the details for it all have come.